Under the Speaker's announced policy of January 6, 2015, the gentleman from Indiana, Mr. Rokita, is recognized for 60 minutes as the designee of the majority party.
Mr. Speaker, good afternoon. It's an honor to stand before the chamber today and talk about one of my favorite subjects and one of the favorite subjects of all the speakers that are going to appear before this floor in the next hour, and that is the state of Indiana. And in particular, the fact that we, as a very proud state which has offered so much to this nation, we're celebrating our 200th anniversary since admission to the Union. It's been the highest honor of my life to serve Indiana in public office, and I know for all the speakers today, it's been the same for them. We have a lot to talk about. We have very few minutes, if you consider that, and so I'd like to get right to introducing some of my colleagues who are here to celebrate the bicentennial of the state of Indiana. The first being one of my good friends, Mr. Todd Young from Indiana's 9th Congressional District. He's represented that district since 2010. He's an amazing young leader, and last month he was made our senator-elect to serve in the next chamber, and we look forward to working with him. So, Mr. Speaker, at this time I yield to Mr. Young of Indiana.
Well, I thank the gentleman, and it's been a privilege serving with you in the House on behalf of the people of Indiana. I look forward to our continued work together, and I'm just so grateful for our delegation and the leadership they've exhibited on behalf of this state. But I rise today, Mr. Speaker, to recognize Indiana's bicentennial celebration. Much of our state's great history emanated from a little town in Indiana's 9th Congressional District, which I've had the honor and privilege of representing for the last 6 years. The town is Carson. It's located in Harrison County, which is on the banks of the Ohio River. In 1816, James Madison, our then president, signed an act, the Enabling Act, to explore the possibility of statehood for Indiana. Soon after, in June of 1816, 43 delegates congregated across the territory. They came to descend on Carson, and their purpose was to draft our state's first constitution. Much of the delegates' work was done under the shade of a large elm tree, known by all of those in our delegation and known by so many Hoosiers and even people outside of the state today as the Constitution elm. That tree still stands, and Indiana is still going strong. Our Constitution set the table for the state's first election in August of that year, where Jonathan Jennings was elected our governor. In November, Governor Jennings and Indiana's newly elected representatives met in the new Capitol building, a beautiful building, and the intention there was to commence the state's first General Assembly session. Their work resulted in Indiana formally being admitted as the country's 19th state in December of 1816. Carson would serve as the state's capital until 1825, when the state's government was then moved to Indianapolis, where it remains today, centrally in the state. Now, Carson also served as the site of Indiana's only battle during the Civil War. The attack was a part of Morgan's raid as Confederate troops descended across the Ohio River under the leadership of Confederate General John Hunt Morgan. He moved across parts of Indiana, Kentucky, Ohio, and Tennessee in 1863, and it was a small militia of Hoosiers that met Morgan's Confederates, and that skirmish is still celebrated today. So Carson's importance to our state's history can't be highlighted enough, but it's one area on the map, one very important area on the map of the state of Indiana. There's so many other important towns, cities, and Hoosiers that I know will be highlighted and accentuated in the course of this celebration here on the floor of the U.S. House. I commend my colleague, Todd Rokita, for shining a bright light on our celebration of 200 years. I look forward to continuing to celebrate Indiana's Bicentennial with Hoosiers and celebrating the rich history which our state has followed and celebrating all the good years we know will come. So with that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman, and I thank the gentleman for his service. Look forward to working with him in the future. Thank you for honoring our great state, sir, and thank you for your service to the country. Indiana has had a long and proud history acting as a leader in many crucial fields and enriching the history of our nation overall. Hoosiers have helped give us everything from airplanes to penicillin and insulin, and even walked the first steps on the moon. Both Wilbur Wright and Eli Lilly hailed from Indiana and permanently altered the course of human history for the better. Neil Armstrong attended Purdue University, which I'm proud to say is in Indiana's 4th Congressional District. Purdue University is one of the top engineering schools in the country and has been a leader in fighting against rising tuition costs, one of the most important issues facing this Congress and the next, and actually the next generation of students entirely. Our state is lucky, however, in that Purdue is hardly the only outstanding higher education option available. I myself am proud alumnus of 2 Indiana colleges, universities, Wabash College and the Indiana School of Law. And we fight hard to be an education partner for all Hoosiers and all our institutions. And that includes the entire delegation, whether Republican or Democrat. In that vein, let me, Mr. Speaker, yield to another distinguished Hoosier and member of our delegation, Representative Larry Bhushan. He's a doctor by trade, practiced well the profession his entire adult life, starting in the United States Navy, and now represents Indiana's 8th Congressional District. Indiana couldn't be prouder of Representative Bhushan and what he brings not only to the Energy and Commerce Committee, but to this very floor every day that we're in session. So with that, I'd like to yield to Dr. Bhushan for as much time as he may consume.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to thank Mr. Rokita from the 4th District for yielding and for putting together this special order on behalf of our state. You know, Indiana boasts 2 of America's presidents and now 8 vice presidents. We're the home of Hoosier hysteria, a great basketball tradition, and the greatest spectacle in racing, the Indianapolis 500. We love our breaded pork tenderloins and our sugar cream pie. We have the 6th largest National Guard in the nation, made up of over 13,000 Hoosiers, that has defended this country in wars from the Battle of Tippecanoe to World War II to the global war on terror. Most importantly, Indiana is home to the most humble, generous, and compassionate and hardworking citizens in our country. And our great state, all 6.5 million Hoosiers, is now celebrating 200 years. I want to take a minute to briefly highlight a few of the things specific to the 8th Congressional District in Indiana. This year, my annual art competition for high school students focused on celebrating Indiana to commemorate the Hoosier State's Bicentennial. We had a lot of creative submissions from talented students across southern Indiana and the Wabash Valley. The winning art piece recognized the 100th year anniversary of Bosse Field in Evansville, a baseball field. Bosse Field is the 3rd oldest ballpark in the country and still in regular use for professional baseball. It was also featured in the popular film in 1991, A League of Their Own. A lot of that was filmed at Bosse Field in Evansville, Indiana. I'm also proud to say that communities in Indiana's 8th Congressional District were exceptionally involved in the Bicentennial Legacy Project. The Bicentennial Legacy Project showcases the best of Indiana and to promote and support important community projects and programs across the state. It's really the best of the best for what the Hoosier State has to offer. There are nearly 300 officially sanctioned bicentennial legacy projects undertaken in counties and communities in the 8th Congressional District. The 8th District is also home to premier places of historic, cultural, and national significance. Lyle Station in Gibson County, a small farming community that was an original settlement of freed slaves nearly 200 years ago. Lyle Station is highlighted nationally at the Smithsonian Institute's new National Museum of African American History and Culture. Vincennes in Knox County, established in 1801 as Indiana's first city. It served as our territorial capital and was a key player in the American Revolution. It's also home to George Rogers Clark National Park and President William Henry Harrison's Grouseland, his home when he was governor of the Indiana Territory. Excuse me. New Harmony in Posey County was first established as a communal utopian society and later a center for knowledge and science. In Spencer County, there is the home of President Abraham Lincoln as a youth and a young man, and is the home of Lincoln's boyhood home, National Park. We have a strong German Catholic heritage in southwest Indiana with St. Meinrad Arch Abbey in Spencer County and a Monastery of Immaculate Conception in Du Bois County. Indiana's 8th District is also home to Naval Support Activity Crane, the U.S. Navy's third largest installation in the entire world. Last week, the base celebrated its 75th anniversary. In 1915, the Root Glass Company developed the very first Coca-Cola bottle in Terre Haute, Indiana. That's one for the trivia question book. Where was the first Coca-Cola bottle designed and made? It was made in Terre Haute, Indiana. That bottle has now become an iconic world-recognized brand. Of course, we have Hoosier National Forest, which takes up a good portion of the southern area of my state, which is home to a lot of activities that Hoosiers enjoy with the great outdoors. Along with Patoka National Wildlife Refuge near Oakland City, Indiana, and it serves the same purpose. Of course, we have the world-famous Santa Claus postmark. Santa Claus, Indiana, every year at Christmas has literally tens of thousands of boxes of Christmas cards sent to Santa Claus so they can have the unique postmark from Santa Claus, Indiana, that is usually designed by a local student in a competition. And they pick that, and every year around Christmas time, I get the pleasure to go over to Santa Claus to the post office and postmark some of those Christmas cards myself. In manufacturing, everything from noodles to nuclear components are made in the 8th District of Indiana. We're also a principal supplier of the world's agricultural products. So as you can see, Indiana's 8th Congressional District has a rich history, and I'm proud to represent this area. It's an honor and a privilege to serve with all of my Hoosier colleagues. And thank you again, Representative Rokita, for putting this together, and I yield back to Congressman Rokita.
I thank the gentleman. I quickly want to turn our attention and yield to the gentleman from Indianapolis, Mr. Andre Carson. He represents Indiana's 7th Congressional District, and like us all, he is a fierce advocate for the different communities in his district. Additionally, Andre and I both serve on the Transportation and Infrastructure Committee. I think that's an important position to have when the motto of your state is Crossroads of America. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'd like to yield as much time as he may consume to Mr. Carson from Indianapolis.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I want to thank my friend, Congressman Rokita, who has done a great job at representing his constituents, and we appreciate him for assembling a great body of Hoosiers from all across the great state of Indiana, and thank you again. Mr. Speaker, I rise today to commemorate a milestone in Indiana's history, the bicentennial of our great state. You know, for the past 200 years, Indiana has stood as a beacon of opportunity for millions of Hoosiers who came to the state to make a better life for themselves and their families. Indiana's history stems from our earliest Native American inhabitants. In fact, the state's name literally means land of the Indians. Early settlers befriended Native Americans as they came from New York in the Northeast, Kentucky in the South, and Ohio in the Midwest. They settled across a geography as varied as Indiana's people, stretching from rolling hills in southern Brown County to flat and sandy in the north along the Indiana Dunes National Lake shore. These influences created a melting pot of influences that remain today. Over the past 200 years, Mr. Speaker, Indiana has been home to countless colorful and transformative figures like the Jackson Five, Larry Bird, John Cougar Mellencamp, Dan Quayle, Babyface, Mike Epps, and countless others. But more than any individual, Mr. Speaker, when folks think of Indiana, they think of racing, they think of basketball. In fact, the great Hoosier State is credited with the origin of high school basketball. Our college teams are some of the most consistently successful in the country, and the enthusiasm surrounding the sport is unmatched. In my hometown of Indianapolis, we're proud to have hosted the Indianapolis 500 for 100 eventful years. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway has long been the world's gold standard for racetracks, hosting some of the most historic races and prompting countless innovations. But what makes Indiana so special is not what most people think of first, Mr. Speaker. It's not a historical figure or notable accomplishment. What makes Indiana great is the type of people who live there. Hoosiers have truly built America. Students at our world-class universities have spawned creative businesses and have grown our economy across the country. Our workers have built millions of automobiles, created life-saving medicines, and advanced sports to new levels. Our farmers feed America, the entire world. You know, we joke about how friendly and welcoming Hoosiers are. Now, living in Indiana, you don't always recognize it, but coming here to Washington, D.C., has made me realize how real Hoosier hospitality is. Now, unlike a lot of D.C., I'm talking about Capitol Hill. I'm not talking about the rest of D.C. They're great people. Staffers are great here, too. But Hoosiers care about people. We want to make them feel welcome. And we want to help them when we can. The Hoosiers we see today who grew up in a state built by all of those before us are the reason that this bicentennial is so special. I can't imagine a better place to live, Mr. Speaker, and I'm proud to call Indiana home. I'm proud that I grew up there, and that my daughter will too. And representing this wonderful state in Congress continues to be a tremendous honor. So happy birthday, Indiana. May our next 200 years be as full of history, innovation, and achievement as our past 200. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I yield back.
I thank the gentleman. Reclaiming my time, I appreciate the...
For a second.
I can.
Chair will receive a message.
Mr. Speaker, a message from the Senate.
Mr. Speaker,
Madam Secretary.
I have been directed by the Senate to inform the House that the Senate agreed to the conference report accompanying S-2943, cited as the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2017.
The gentleman from Indiana is recognized. The gentleman from Indiana is recognized. Mr. Rokita.
I thank the Speaker, and I thank the gentleman, Mr. Carson, for his words. You'll recall that he mentioned the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and here's a great picture of it, circa about, I would say, late 1980s. Just part of our heritage that we'll be sharing here over the next hour. You know, when I was last commenting about the great Hoosier State here at this podium, I talked about Hoosier schools. Hoosier places of higher learning have also become major players in the sports world, winning national championships and creating some fierce yet fun rivalries. For example, in Indiana's 4th Congressional District, there's both DePauw University and Wabash College, and they face off every year in the iconic Motown Bell game. It's been going on for over 100 years. Now, as Wabash men, I don't think there's any question whom Representative Messer and myself root for. But that's just another example of the great Hoosier spirit in the Motown Bell game. With that, focusing on Purdue University again for just a second, I want to yield some time to a great member of this body who's also retiring this year. Mr. Curt Clawson of Florida is no longer a resident, of course, of Indiana, but he was at one time helping lead Purdue's basketball team to untold heights. So at this time, Mr. Speaker, I yield as much time as he may consume to the gentleman from Florida, Mr. Curt Clawson.
Thank you, Chairman Rokita, for those kind words and for your friendship and support and your flexibility in this House. There are very few people like you, and I'll miss you. First thing I have to say today is boiler up. Mr. Speaker, boiler up. I'm from Florida. I proudly represent Southwest Florida that I love so much. But I went to high school and college in Indiana, so part of me will always be from Indiana, and I will always love the state and its wonderful people. In 1976, my dad moved the family of 7 kids to southeastern Indiana from the south, and we went to a small town in southeastern Indiana called Batesville, kind of a typical town of 4,000 or 5,000 people, typical hotbed of basketball and shooters, with well-known sports names in the area like Paul Ehrman, the co-chairman, going into the Hall of Fame, Baseball Indiana Hall of Fame next year, Ace Mormon, Dave Gall, among other basketball and sports greats in southern Indiana. My parents immediately loved the Indiana culture that we were exposed to in Batesville. Best summarized by words of my dad, who would say something like this: work hard. Don't complain. Put the group, the team, and the family first. Go to church on Sunday. Actually kneel down and pray and show a little humility. Right, Dad? Eventually, trying to do as best I could to follow my father's counsel, I went to Purdue to play for the College Hall of Fame coach, Coach Gene Cady. And I have to tell you how much of an honor that was and a memorable experience in my life. Before continuing on a little bit about Coach Cady, I want to compliment our current president at Purdue, the former governor of Indiana, Mitch Daniels, who moves our university into the future with a new business model of innovation and leadership. President Mitch is a leader who is not afraid of change, and I admire that, because without change tomorrow, you lose. But back to Coach Cady. Our senior year, Mr. Vitale on TV picked our team last because we had lost our best player to the NBA draft. I went to Coach Cady's office before the season as one of his senior captains, and I asked him, Coach, how do you feel about this team? You believe we're going to be last? He said, no, we're not going to be last. I said, how do you know, Coach? How do you know? He said, because I like my locker room. What does that mean? I know y'all going to listen to me, and you'll follow what I say. I know you'll share the ball, and I know you'll outwork the competition. Well, of course, Coach was right. We went from being picked last to winning the Big Ten. Coach Cady's first of 6 Big Ten championships in 25 years at Purdue, 4 consensus National Coach of the Year, 6 National Coach of the Year in one media service or another, and, importantly, in 25 years at Purdue, a winning record against the coach down in Bloomington. So I want to honor Coach today And I want to end by thanking our president at Purdue University, Mitch Daniels. Coach, I honor you and admire you for what you have accomplished. And most of all, I want to thank you, Coach, for your loyalty to me. My last game was bad. I have to live with that forever. But for 30 years now, you've shown I've lived in your umbrella of love and loyalty. You've always been there for me, and I honor you for that, and I appreciate your loyalty as the last important lesson of so many that you taught me. And happy birthday to our wonderful state of Indiana and our wonderful people with our basic cultures of believing in God and treating one another with love and respect. With that, I yield back.
I thank the gentleman from Florida for those excellent words. I can't believe the last game you played at Purdue University was all that bad, but we'll go back to the tapes and look. And either way, it's now part of our wonderful Hoosier history. There are, of course, quite a few other notable sporting events in Indiana. Andre Carson spoke of one of them, and that is one that can't be rivaled, and that is called the, quote, greatest spectacle in racing, unquote. And I just recently had a picture of the Speedway up here on the floor. The Indianapolis 500 celebrated its 100th running earlier this year and continues Indiana's storied history with automobiles, which began in the late 1800s when Elwood Haynes, the, quote, father of the automobile, unquote, developed his horseless carriage in Kokomo, Indiana. Now, Kokomo, Indiana is in Howard County, and it itself as a county and Kokomo as a city has a great, wonderful, rich automotive history and history in other respects as well. It's an honor for me to be able to share that county with one of our great members from the Indiana delegation, an accomplished leader, an accomplished lady who has done wonderful things throughout her professional career, and in this House continues to lead the way, most recently by being chosen as our next chairwoman of the House Ethics Committee. It's my pleasure at this time, Mr. Speaker, to yield such time as she may consume to my friend, Ms. Susan Brooks of Indiana's 5th Congressional District.
Mr. Speaker, I rise today in celebration of our home state of Indiana's bicentennial, and I want to thank the gentleman from Indiana's 4th Congressional District for organizing this very meaningful celebration of our state's 200 years. And just want to thank you for your leadership here in the House, representing not only the 4th District, but all Hoosiers so very proudly. And it's your time as Secretary of State, where you served throughout our state, and really appreciate the fact that you put the time and your staff put the time and effort into making this last minutes on the House floor so possible as we close out this 114th Congress. I've been asked to specifically highlight, I wanted to specifically highlight a little bit of the history of the 5th District, where I represent. But more importantly, how that history informs, inspires, and ignites our future. Since we became a state in 1816, Indiana has transformed again and again, growing and evolving into the strong and thriving state it is today. I want to talk with you about Conner Prairie in my district, because Conner Prairie has grown up with the state. What started as a log cabin in the early 1800s by the White River has grown into a stately brick home that has served as the seat of early Hamilton County government. It's now an interactive history museum and park, and most recently, it's been recognized as the only Smithsonian affiliate in Indiana, and it's a leading innovator in the history museum field with more than 360,000 visitors each year. In 1800, William Conner settled in Indiana to become a fur trader. He and his Lenape Indian spouse and their 6 children lived in that first log cabin on the property. In 1818, Conner played a pivotal role as interpreter and liaison of the Treaty of St. Mary's, in which the Delaware tribe ceded lands in central Indiana for those west of the Mississippi River. The Lenape tribe, including Conner's wife and children, left Indiana, but Conner decided to stay. In 1823, He and his second wife, Elizabeth, built a beautiful brick home on a hill overlooking land that came to be known as Conner Prairie. This home served as the seat of Hamilton County government and the local post office in the early days of the county's founding. In 1934, Colonel Eli Lilly, then the president of the pharmaceutical company that he founded, which remains today in Indianapolis, Indiana, Colonel Lilly purchased Conner Prairie and the old brick home in hopes of restoring it and opening it to the public. Lilly believed that history and its preservation were cornerstones of American democracy. He wanted Conner Prairie to be a place where people could connect with their history and to see their heritage brought to life. Little did he realize that his idea would be so vividly brought to life in modern-day Conner Prairie. Growing from the site of occasional historical reenactments, Conner Prairie blossomed into a living history museum that transports visitors back to the Hoosier frontier and invites them to see life in Indiana in 1836. Prairie Town, an immersive exhibit where people, animals, buildings, objects, and daily routines remain just as they were 180 years ago, was just the beginning. In addition to the Prairie Town exhibit, Conner Prairie has expanded its historical experiences to now include an 1859 balloon voyage. And you, the gentleman from Indiana's 4th who loves to fly, I hope you've tried the balloon voyage. It's really remarkable. As well as an 1863 Civil War journey and a Lenape Indian camp. And in addition to connecting with their history, visitors to Conner Prairie today can see how innovation in math, science, technology, and engineering have shaped our history and how these vital and growing industries will shape our state's future and are shaping the state of Indiana. Students and children can build planes, create an electrical circuit or radio, construct a windmill, or invent their own products, which they then attempt to patent. I agree with Colonel Lilly that history is a cornerstone of our democracy. I believe that Conner Prairie is an incredible realization of the idea that history plays a pivotal role in our future. In fact, Conner Prairie and William Conner and the Conner family is one of the reasons that we named our son Conner and why we spell his name with an E. And in fact, he happens to be in the balcony of the chamber today. And I'm very pleased that he is here with us to learn more about our state's incredible history and the history of his own name. The brick house that Colonel Lilly purchased in the 30s still stands, and its renovation was an Indiana Bicentennial project. As Indiana celebrates its bicentennial, and in the many years to come, the many places just like Conner Prairie will always help Hoosiers find their heritage, understand our history, and most importantly, ignite the future of our great state. Happy birthday, Indiana, and all Hoosiers. Thank you, and I yield back.
I thank the gentlewoman for reclaiming my time. Appreciate her leadership in the 5th District and throughout Indiana. It's just another example of, frankly, how we believe our state is great. In that vein, I want to yield such time as he may consume a dear friend of mine from Indiana's 3rd Congressional District, Mr. Marlin Stutzman, who has not only served in this chamber, but also in Indiana State House, first as a state representative and later as a state senator. A farmer from the northeast part of our state, he brings with him to this House and to his future endeavors a robust knowledge and practice of our state's best traditions and history. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield to Mr. Stutzman for how much time as he may consume.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank my colleague from Indiana. It's great to be here on the floor with my colleagues from the Indiana delegation as we celebrate our bicentennial in Indiana, but I also find it honoring that we get to be one of the last groups here on the floor discussing an issue here in this Congress as we've wrapped up our business earlier today. And I just want to thank Mr. Rokita and Ms. Brooks and Mr. Messer and others that I see here, Mr. Bhushan earlier, who I've counted a real privilege and an honor to serve with. This will be my last speech on the floor as I end my time here in Congress, and looking forward to going back home to Indiana again. So I come with some mixed emotions, frankly, but also very excited about what's in store for you all, what's in store for Indiana, what's in store for our country, as I've had the privilege to serve Indiana's 3rd congressional district for these past 6 years. And I know that just as you all feel, that we feel very privileged to be Hoosiers. Indiana is just oftentimes thought of to be that flyover state from the East Coast to the West Coast or vice versa. But so many wonderful things are happening in Indiana that we're proud of, and that we feel, especially at this time, as our own governor, the Vice President-elect Mike Pence, who's been our governor for the last 4 years in Indiana, is showing and exhibiting the good policies, the good nature, the humbleness, the character and integrity that so many Hoosiers display on a daily basis. And so I think that as I leave, I'm looking forward to watching you all continue to face some difficult challenges, but with a lot of opportunity in front of us. And I know that Hoosiers all across our state and Americans are looking for leadership, and I know that we've seen that in Indiana with our former Governor Mitch Daniels. It's great to see our colleague, Mr. Clawson, here earlier, who's also going to be departing after this Congress. We have such great history, and of course our sports history is one that we love to talk about and brag about. I also want to recognize my family, my wife Christy and our sons Peyton and Preston. Peyton, of course, was named after a football player in Indianapolis, and he was one of those kids in Indiana that was named Peyton during a great streak. Peyton Manning and the Indianapolis Colts. We've got such great ownership, great leaders in Indianapolis and across the country with the teams that we're proud of in Indiana with the Colts, the Pacers, and we've got a great college tradition. You turn on ESPN and you see, of course, Indiana basketball, Purdue basketball, Notre Dame. Valparaiso always ends up in the tournament at the end of the year, it seems like, and of course other teams that just continue to exhibit that tradition that we have in Indiana of great basketball. And of course our high school basketball is like no other state has, and there's something really remarkable about high school basketball in Indiana. I also want to just quick recognize a friend that just happens to be here today, Randy Lewandowski, who's the president of the Indianapolis Indians, our baseball team in Indiana, AAA affiliate of the Pittsburgh Pirates, and he just happens to be in town, and proud of the work that he does to bring great baseball to our city and to our state, and proud of the folks that, like Randy, work so hard to make Indiana a great place to live. And of course, our racing is also such a proud sport for us in Indiana. But more importantly than all of that, you look at the hardworking Hoosiers on a daily basis who go to work every day, whether it's in the factories, whether it's in the trucking industry, or we're known as the crossroads of America, and you have distribution centers all across the state. You think of the teachers that do such a remarkable job in teaching our children. And as you get to know people across the state of Indiana, I've become just more and more proud to be called a Hoosier, to have the opportunity to represent them, and to know that we all love life, we love liberty, we want to continue to protect the ability to pursue happiness as Americans, and we know that that life is difficult, life has challenges, but working together and working hard, keeping our head down, and facing those challenges together as communities, as a state, and as a country, we can be successful. And as we celebrate our bicentennial, I just know that Indiana has done so much for me and my family. I want to thank my parents, Albert and Sarah Stutzman, and my brothers, Matt and Chris, and my sister Lynette, and their families for the support that they've given to me and this time that I've had the opportunity to serve here. But I know that there's so many families across our state that support one another and to working to make life better not only for them but for their families. Indiana also has the fourth largest National Guard in the country. You have, of course, Texas, California, New York, but Indiana is one of the largest National Guards in the country. And I think that shows the level of commitment that Hoosiers have been willing to sacrifice, to commit to the defense and security of this country. And I appreciate many of our leaders in our state that have led a National Guard to show that we're willing to do our part and to help lead the way. And so I think of traveling across the state. There's so many different parts of Indiana that are so proud to have as part of our state. And so I would just say to anyone listening and watching this as we talk about our beloved Indiana, if you ever get a chance to visit, there's so much to do and see and to enjoy. The nature from top to bottom, from Lake Michigan in the northwest to the Ohio Valley in the southern part of the state, the beautiful farmland, the rolling hills in southern part of Indiana. And we just have such tremendous tradition and, of course, the values that we all hold very dearly and know that we want to do our part to not only make Indiana great, but to continue to make America great as well. So with that, Mr. Rokita, I really appreciate the opportunity, and thank you for putting this time together as we reflect on our great state. And I want to wish you the very best, and my colleagues, the rest of our colleagues, the very best as well in the future, and know that we are, folks across this country can look to you for solid leadership and appreciate all that you do. So with that, Mr. Speaker, I'll yield back the balance of my time.
I thank the gentleman reclaiming my time. A lot has been talked about already, from Indiana's manufacturing prowess to our agricultural richness to our own rich history. I want to focus just a little bit before yielding to my good friend, Mr. Messer, to talk a little bit about Indiana's agricultural history. It is in the top 10 in the nation in agricultural sales, with over $11 billion in those sales. The agriculture industry creates good Hoosier jobs and provides our nation with an array of products, from corn to soybeans to hogs and poultry. And you just have to go a few miles in any direction on any one of our roads to know that by looking out your window. In fact, Indiana has so many agricultural products that there are 6 times as many chickens in the state than people. My district in particular has produced several major agricultural innovations. The town of Kokomo, that I mentioned earlier, is known as the city of firsts, quote unquote, due to the many products invented there, including both the first canned tomato juice and the first mechanical corn picker, which revolutionized the farming of one of Indiana's most important crops. Indiana is specifically the nation's second largest producer of popcorn, and while that definitely helps us all enjoy trips to the movies, Indiana's contributions to the entertainment field have not stopped there. Famous Hoosiers, as Andre Carson mentioned, such as John Mellencamp, Axl Rose, James Dean, and the king of pop himself, Michael Jackson, have all made their mark on our nation, providing us with memorable songs and iconic movies while never forgetting where they came from. Another great Hoosier who hasn't forgotten where he's come from is my good friend representing the 6th District of Indiana, which includes Columbus, Muncie, and Richmond. And that's Mr. Luke Messer. He and I both went to Wabash College together, and as I mentioned earlier, we know who we rooted for at the Monon Bell game. So with that, I yield as much time as he may consume. The gentleman from Indiana's 6th Congressional District, Mr. Luke Messer.
Well, thank you. I thank the gentleman for organizing today's celebration of Indiana's 200th birthday. I thank you for your distinguished little giant career at Wabash College and all of your service to our great state. It's an exciting time to be a Hoosier any year, but it's a pretty big birthday coming up this year when on December 11th, 2016, we'll be celebrating our state's 200th birthday, 200 years since Indiana became our nation's 19th state. I'm holding this basketball because when you think about Indiana, you can't help but think about basketball. And my district, Indiana's 6th Congressional District, has a couple of pretty important distinguishing factors in Indiana's great history as a basketball state. First, the Marlin Indians, the great Marlin Indians team that were the 1954 state champions, that showed that in our single-class basketball, the small little engine that can win a state title. That is from Ripley County in the middle of my state. And then the gym, the Knightstown gym, where the movie Hoosiers was filmed, is also in Indiana's 6th Congressional District. I'm going to throw a chess pass of this basketball over to my colleagues from Indiana, where we'll show you can catch it. Here you go, Mr. Bhushan. Nice, see it? And let the record show he caught the ball, all right? Joe needs a Hoosier, right? Bring the house to order, as Marlin said. Thank you, Mr. Clawson. You know, this Sunday we celebrate 2 centuries of statehood history and tradition and accomplishment in Indiana. We Hoosiers have a great deal to be proud of in our state and in the 6th District that I represent. The 6th District is home to renowned architecture, historical landmarks, beautiful parks, and famous Americans. The Wright Brothers spent part of their childhood in our corner of Indiana. Wilbur was born in Millville, and Orville first took up kite building in Richmond, Indiana. Richmond was also the home to Jeanette Records, and there are some of the earliest jazz recordings were ever produced in the late 1910s and early 1920s, earning Richmond the nickname of the cradle of recorded jazz. David Letterman attended school at Ball State University in Muncie, as did Jim Davis, who is famous for the Garfield cartoon. Hancock County in the 6th District is the home of the famed Hoosier poet James Whitcomb Riley, who wrote, among other things, Little Orphan Annie. Columbus is known for beautiful architecture and for being the home of the oldest theater in the state, Crump Theater, built in 1889 by John Crump. A centuries-old tree grows atop the Decatur County Courthouse Tower, giving Greensburg, my hometown where I grew up, the nickname Tree City. Famous Hoosiers from the 6th District include Vice President Thomas Hendricks from my adopted hometown of Shelbyville, where my kids began our family's life together with my wife Jennifer. 3-time Indianapolis 500 winner Wilbur Shaw, race car driver Tony Stewart from Columbus, Shelbyville basketball player Bill Garrett, actresses Joyce DeWitt and Jamie Heineman, cinema and television pioneer Francis Jenkins, and the list goes on. We've also had 2 governors hail from our part of the state, Oliver Morton and current Governor Mike Pence. Now the 6th District will be lucky enough to claim another vice president. Vice President-elect and former 6th District Congressman Mike Pence, who we're all very proud of. In fact, I'm so proud of our state, and I don't know that the gentleman would know this. I know at least one of our colleagues were surprised to learn, but my wife Jennifer and I actually wrote a book about this great state of Indiana called Hoosier Heart. It's a book that celebrates the history and traditions of our state, the people, its places. I'm just going to read the sort of closing passage of this book as I wrap up my comments today. The book closes this way. The word Hoosier is a mystery. No one knows where it comes from for sure. Some say it was a pioneer greeting. Gentleman here says, "Who's year?" Others say someone once lost an ear. And this young guy asks, "Whose ear?" But whatever a Hoosier used to be, we all know what a Hoosier is today. A Hoosier is someone with Indiana roots, someone who loves our state in every way. Hoosiers come in all shapes and sizes, all races and all creeds. Some Hoosiers don't even live in our state. Over time, some Hoosiers do leave. But wherever Hoosiers now live, they are never far apart, because the key to being a Hoosier, most of you won't be able to see this, is having a big Hoosier heart. Happy birthday, Indiana.
Thank the gentleman reclaiming my time. It's a great book, as my family knows as well. And excellent words from the gentleman from Indiana's 6th Congressional District. You know, throughout this all, Indiana's 4th Congressional District has more than done its part in adding to our state's rich history. The Battle of Tippecanoe, for example, which put Indiana on the path to statehood, took place in modern-day Lafayette and gained recognition for General William Henry Harrison, who would go on to become our 9th president. The 4th District is also home to the first Indiana state flag, pictured here. This is from about 1916, when our flag design this flag design was awarded the honor of becoming our official flag. It was created by Paul Hadley of Mooresville in Indiana's 4th District for a contest during our state's first centennial celebration. Our district is also home to many important landmarks. The Boone County Courthouse has the largest one-piece limestone columns in the country. Newton County is home to 23 bison, our state animal. And Benton and White counties have one of the largest windmill farms in the nation. This is just a small sample of the great parts of our state and district, and our bicentennial celebration has done a fantastic job of highlighting these and many others over the past 12 months. I've even had the pleasure of participating in several of the events, like many of my colleagues have, including selecting a bicentennial-themed entry as the winner for our office's Congressional Art Competition and serving as a torchbearer for the torch relay. The relay saw the bicentennial torch, designed and made by Purdue students, travel through each of our 92 counties over the course of several weeks, and highlighted both the unique history and the places in each part of our state and the common bond that makes all of us Hoosiers. I served as a torchbearer in Fountain County and was very impressed by the high turnout and enthusiasm at a time in this nation's life when it's hard to get members of a particular place to act like a community because of so many different distractions and diversions and how technology has entered our lives. It was humbling, sobering, but very prideful to see thousands of people in a relatively small county come together for such an event as to see a torch going by and being passed along by the county courthouse. The Hoosiers that I saw were well prepared for the event, and we're not going to let a little bit of rain keep them from coming out and celebrating towns and their counties, and most of all, our wonderful state. The event itself helped remind me of the most important and unique part of our state, and that's the people. Hoosiers are kind and gracious people who take pride in their work and in their state. They have been the secret to our state's 200 years of success. Now, this Sunday's final bicentennial event is entitled Igniting the Future, and it is my belief and hope that it will inspire our next generation of Hoosier leaders to continue this record of accomplishment and never forget about what makes this state and our country so exceptional, exceptional with a capital E. Myself and my colleagues here from Indiana look forward to working with these future leaders and ensuring the success of our state for another 200 years. Before yielding back, I'd like to yield to the gentleman from Evansville, Mr. Larry Bhushan, as such time as he may consume. Dr. Bhushan.
Thank you, Mr. Rokita. I want to use some of the last time that we have to honor a great Hoosier. I know others will have comments, and today, as we recognize Indiana's 200th birthday, it's also important to acknowledge the contribution of one of those who's made an indelible mark on our shared history. Without a doubt, one of those people is a man who delivered his final speech from the Senate floor this past week with a heartfelt message about preserving the freedoms that make this country so great. Senator Dan Coates exemplifies what it means to be a public servant. He's dedicated his life to improving the lives of his fellow citizens. He served his country in the United States Army. He has spent time in both the U.S. House and the United States Senate. He served as an ambassador to Germany, assuming that role just 3 days prior to the tragic attacks on September 11, 2001. After this distinguished career, Senator Coates answered the call to serve his fellow citizens once again in the United States Senate, where he's been a national leader on reducing federal spending and fixing our economy and keeping our nation safe and secure. And a little personal story, I was a cardiovascular surgeon prior to coming to Congress, and when I spend time at events with Senator Coates, he always likes to tell everyone he feels very comfortable because if he has a heart problem, Congressman Bhushan will pick up a butter knife or something and fix him up right there on the spot. And it's a really humorous story that I enjoy him telling every time we're together at an event. Senator Coates has a great sense of humor. And while his time in the Senate has come to an end, I'm also confident he will continue to be a voice and an advocate for the issues he cares about most. Our state and our country are lucky to have benefited from the service of a great man like Senator Dan Coates. I wish Dan and Marcia all the best. I yield.
I thank the gentleman. Reclaiming my time, I'd now like to yield 2 minutes to the gentleman from the 6th District, Mr. Luke Messer.
Well, thank the gentleman. When given the opportunity to say something nice about Dan Coates, I didn't want to pass it up. If I could give one word to describe U.S. Senator Dan Coates, it would be Hoosier. I mean, he is a person of grace and humility, of hard work and humor, never worried about who got credit, loved his country, and made the sacrifices through his life and career to make our country better. I am honored to call Dan a friend. I appreciate his mentorship of our entire delegation in the time that I've had an opportunity to serve here. I suspect Dan's service for our country isn't quite over yet, and I look forward to whatever he does next. And I certainly wish Dan and Marcia and their entire family, because one of the other great things about Dan Coates is he is a family man. I wish their entire family a great future. Thank you. I yield back.
I thank the gentleman for yielding and reclaiming my time. I think the gentleman's right. I don't know if Dan Coates will ever be able to retire. I know he wants to. But with that, I'd like to yield 1 minute again to the gentleman from Northeast Indiana in the 3rd Congressional District, Mr. Marlin Stutzman.
Thank the gentleman. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to stand here in front of this House and this body to honor our Senator Dan Coates, who served Indiana in so many different capacities. I actually have the privilege of representing his district, the 3rd District in Northeast Indiana. We've got such a long line of great leaders from Northeast Indiana that have served here in Indiana, are here in Washington from our state. And Dan Coates, of course, exemplified a man of character, humbleness, and leadership. And as he followed former Vice President Dan Quayle, who I also would like to recognize as well, another man who showed leadership from our state here in Washington, D.C., and both of those gentlemen have been heroes and models for me growing up watching both of them as they took time to come to Washington and show what Hoosier leadership is all about. So thank you again for honoring them today.
I thank the gentleman and reclaiming my time. Indiana, and in closing this out, Mr. Speaker, let me just say that I have remarks from Susan Brooks of the 5th District that I'd like to submit for the record regarding Senator Dan Coates. And I'd like to say that Indiana has produced no shortage of great statesmen, as we've reflected on this last half hour. And Senator Dan Coates has indisputably joined their ranks after decades of service to both our state and to our country. You know, my own history with Senator Coates goes way back to when I was an intern in his Senate office. And if he was on this floor today, ladies and gentlemen, I'm sure he would say I was one of the worst interns he ever had. But nonetheless, he started my career in politics with that unpaid job that was one of the best experiences of my life. He has conservative leadership, and I know that he was anxious to get back to helping out the office and do whatever he could for the state of Indiana, however he could. Since those many years ago, since those first observations that I've had of Senator Coates, he has gone from senator to U.S. ambassador to the state of Germany and back to senator again. It's a long and distinguished career full of dedication to the right ideals and a desire to fight for what's best for all Hoosier families and what's best for Americans. I appreciate all of the work, like we all do, that Senator Coates has done and the causes he has advocated for and for his counsel. And as been said, I don't know if he's actually going to be able to retire this time, but whatever his desire, he deserves it. I have no doubt that he will continue to represent the best interests of our state and this country, even after his time in the Senate has come to an end. And I would like to issue a heartfelt thank you for all of his work, and I wish him my best on all his future endeavors. And again, Mr. Speaker, please, I hope you'll join us all in wishing Indiana a happy birthday on this wonderful occasion of our 200th anniversary. And with that, Mr. Speaker, I yield back.
Gentlemen, have any unanimous consent requests?
I ask unanimous consent that all members have 5 legislative days to revise and extend their remarks on the subject of this special order.
Without objection.